going to black 20 seconds. Ten seconds. Credits coming up.
Hi, I'm Paula Gloria, and this is another episode farther down the rabbit hole in the persona of the 11Cowgirl. And this is a gift from one of my donors, and I want to thank him very much. And also say the reason I'm calling myself the 11Cowgirl is I have with me a guest who I first met on the internet through YouTube. He had a couple handles. We had a little bit of a contentious relationship at first, and he finally landed on one handle called the 11Shaman, and he did some work that was mocking us, but it was so darn funny that I found that people, friends and family who I couldn't connect with my own work was sort of getting turned on to the ideas because of his work. So I'd like to introduce John Galino, a.k.a. 11Shaman.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Paula. Thank you for having me on your show.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. And also Josh Volinski, who's the host of the Josh Volinski Show. Thanks, Josh, for coming back.
Yeah, the Josh Wolinski Show is growing by leaps and bounds, and it improves every time. And we still have our best work to do.
Yes, exactly. And that's the nice thing about working together. I thought for this show, since we outlined a lot of the problems of alternative media, and particularly how we were victims during 9/11, and we didn't have a media that was really responsible. Like one of your first handles when I was kind of questioning who you were was MNN dropped the ball on 9/11, and I thought that you were maybe from some other part of the globe even, who was just sort of imagining what was happening during you were slamming 9/11 or MNN, who I felt was like our last bastion of hope for alternative media. And then I grew to realize that you had more experience than I did about 9/11, and we went over that in the last show. But I thought on this show we might kind of go into solutions. What do you think we can do?
About public access television?
Well, kind of instead of feeling like a victim, you know, you always hear you create your reality, and if you don't know the mechanics, that can be almost a cruel statement. But at the same time, it is a cosmic and a tantric principle that if someone's taken energy from you, if you're alert and attentive, and if you can articulate your pain, you have a chance to create a connection of empathy and get that energy back. So you have the power to do the things you need to do.
Well, an environment like MNN is a tough deal. You're lucky if you can find somebody that can actually, empathize in that respect.
Well, you were empathetic when you were in the role.
Yeah, I used to practice nonviolent communication. I mean, I know firsthand what it's like, especially in a volatile environment like MNN. It's easy to see people losing their minds over the shows and how they treat you.
Yeah, they get stressed out.
Yeah,
I did that too a lot. You're just so nervous. You're so nervous.
Well, before I used to work here, I used to get stressed too because I used to have a show called Super 8 Monsters, and sure, I'd come in and say, hey, there was no audio. What happened to my audio? I mean, I used to hate when stuff like that would happen. You tune in, you tell everybody to tune into your show, and there was like no audio. And it turned out like it was something that was just a little switch that had to be switched because you had the hi-fi, channels switches on, and you had to turn them back to normal. I mean, just tiny little things like that.
Well, that's when you get the slam that you're not professional, and then comes the shame. Then you think, you're just a public access producer without realizing you have this incredible opportunity, though. We shouldn't be ashamed of it.
Right. You work hard on your show. He works hard on his show, right?
Yeah.
You come here, you pay, your car fare to get down here. You got to buy your tapes. You got to feed yourself. You've got to come down
yourself.
Here. Yeah, and you got to come down here, and it should work. Everything should just work fine.
But there's a lot of people working here now. I remember Stephanie, and she made the comment, we're only here because of the producers. There was really that feeling that unless the content is created, who's going to care about public access? Although in other parts of the world, where media is such big money, the producers are just like, second to God. Here they're just like, you're just so happy when someone is kind to you.
Yes.
And helps you.
I used to be like that. I used to be very, very helpful.
I know.
And you put in more time than you need. You go above and beyond the call of duty. And there are people here who do that, like Richard Speciali. I mean, that guy, he could be in the commercial world, and he can wipe the floor with the best directors out there. But, you know, he chooses to be here at public access because he understands...
Because he believes in it.
Right. He understands the value of people, regular, ordinary people getting together and talking and communicating and becoming a part of the furniture in everybody's home. You know, that's what it's about.
Yeah. When I walk into MNN or WBAI and I am together, sometimes I'm in a bad mood, but when I'm in together, I remember a couple of very important factors. One, that the people here are artists. They're temperamental. They're stubborn. They're egotistical. And that makes it difficult to really deal with them. But if I keep those things in mind, I find it a bit easier. Also, there is always a shortage of funds. So the way I try to get around it, when I have the right temperament, is to work with these shortcomings. You know, at WBAI we have two major factions. We have one faction that essentially is in programming and management, and one that's trying to come in. So therefore transparency and accountability. But if you know anything about the ways of the world, there isn't any management in the world that wants 100% transparency and 100% accountability. So they're always at each other's throats. So you take all these things into account and you try to maneuver around them.
You know, speaking about the resistance to transparency, I think one of the powerful tools in the Catholic Church was confession. And confession later on got to be construed, oh, you're bad and you're wrong and you should be ashamed. But in truth, I think that we are our own most critical judges. And oftentimes when you confess or you say something and you speak it out, you have the potential to make a connection with other people that would empathize and say, you know what, I've done that too, and, you know, we can still get it on. You know, I even think with 9/11, people say, if they jump to the spiritual approach straight away, they say you have to be compassionate, the Buddha's way is to forgive and all that. But it just, until I really understood more about what was going on with 9/11, it just didn't work. But I found as I started to learn more, I was sort of put in this position to see that whatever you put your attention on grows in your own life. So you can become as corrupt as you know, just in your thinking, and you're nasty to people, and you see it on the comments.
You become your own worst enemy.
Yeah, so if you can work out of that, then the forgiveness naturally comes about. So I always say, yes, I know I should be compassionate, I know I should forgive, but I want to know who exactly to forgive and exactly why I'm forgiving. But I definitely want to get to forgiveness.
Yeah, forgiveness is it's a great thing. Well, empathizing is a form of forgiveness.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, when you come together with someone and you make a connection, you realize you're forgiving yourself as well.
How would that work for you at MNN when you said you were practicing a type of nonviolent communication?
Well, you know, any job you get, right, they tell you you're supposed to act a certain way, you know, be polite, don't ruffle the people's feathers, the customer's always right sort of attitude. But then there comes a point where your rights are violated, where, you know, somebody does something to you that you say, you know, there's no union really to protect you in a non-union environment like MNN. And you're lucky if you have a supervisor that can help with interpersonal relationships between you and coworkers. These are things that are not here, and those are things that you find in a
unions aren't here.
Right, they're on right. So you're sort of like thrown to the elements here.
You mean you don't have an advocate? Like when you said you filled out these different forms of certain...
Yeah, complaints.
What were they called?
Incident reports.
Incident report.
Yeah, so
like in one case, after you filed an incident report and you had a sterling record, you got fired.
Right, it's because, when Steve Mendelson took over, he just hired a bunch of shills to harass the old guard, the older people here. And these were people who were eventually fired themselves or they left. So
because then you create an environment that's not that pleasant.
No, it was an unpleasant environment.
So I guess that's what to keep in mind. How do you create pleasant environments when it's powerful forces are stacked against you?
Well, it's weird, sometimes you want to be pleasant, but you have to be assertive. And sometimes assertiveness is looked at as an authority. So even though you might have an office jerk giving you hell, which in this case there were 2 office jerks at MNN, there was no point. It was after a while it was like pointless. It's like how am I going to get through this crap? So and eventually what it does is you're harassed out of a job. If you don't like the environment, leave. And that's MNN's attitude. Is
that what you did? You left?
No, I was fired. And I was kicked out of the building by these 2 big black guys. They were like 6'5". They had guns. This was the kind of thug mentality of Manhattan Neighborhood Network.
It's just amazing. So it took you a couple of years to get over that in order to come back here. And
I never quite got over it, though.
Well, you're here.
Yeah, I'm here now, but there's a part of me that still wants to, kind of confront some of these people in a sense and say, what the hell were you thinking?
Is that why you said I pushed your buttons? You were trying to push my buttons? What exactly happened?
With us?
Yeah.
On YouTube?
Yeah.
It really it was almost like a prank joke. I mean, it really came out of a mockery. And it was just, just being silly high school shit, really. I mean, it's really where it was coming from because it seemed like it was a high school thing. And like the stuff down with the Waste Group, with We Are Change, and what was going on with Nico, and it seemed like a high school mentality kind of took over, but it was fun. I kind of look at it as fun. It was just.
But you said you thought we were the bad guys creating.
Initially, I thought you were
like
anti-Semitic and you were a Nazi. I thought these things, and I was, plus the We Are Change people were emailing me about supposed crimes that Paula Gloria had committed.
Like I was a pedophile?
They were saying like Paula was like you're like the worst person. But Ugly George comes around, and then I start watching shows with you and him, and he's like, you know who the big problem is? Who's the big Satan in this world? Paula Gloria. And I started thinking to myself, there's something, I'm missing something here. And that's when I just said, let me just become transparent. Let's just take off the mask. Let's just...
Right.
Let's be friends.
That's an interesting thing. What do you have to say, Josh?
Well, I have to say that I've come to the realization long ago that the real battle we have to fight with is human nature. That seems to dominate everything. Now, what we have down here in MNN is a very, very wonderful mission, and it's a wonderful concept, but we really have to work very hard to keep it going. And I believe every word that John says, and as a matter of fact, he said things disappearing a week ago when I was with Cornelius Ricks. He brought in a case of sparkling water.
Oh my God!
From Maroons, and it all disappeared.
Oh my God! Well, that's a freebie.
And that happened about 2 weeks ago.
You know what? The security guards here in this company. I mean, if you want to talk about thieves, I mean, every security guard that they had here was busted and fired from here for stealing. I mean, we had one guy. This guy comes to the studio with his shoes, right? He bought the shoes, and he forgot the shoes here, so it ended up in Lost and Found. So what happens is the next day the security guard comes in with a new pair of shoes, and he's like wearing them, and then the guy comes in, the producer comes in, he's like, hey, you got my shoes on. I mean, that's like they were always doing that. And then like this one guy, he would smoke crack, and they wouldn't look at the video cameras. They have surveillance cameras here, and they waited a year. I remember I told him there was a security guard. He was masturbating in the library, and he was masturbating to a video of R. Kelly having sex with a 13-year-old girl. And I go and I told my coworkers about this. I even told some of the managers, and they did absolutely nothing about it. And lo and behold, a year later, somebody decided to look at the surveillance camera, and the guy's having sex with his woman right out here in the lobby, smoking crack, letting like all kinds of people in. And what did he do? He got busted for stealing, breaking in.
But John, you know that if an FBI agent came in here, an agent provocateur, the first thing he would do is those kind of things to get rid of this concept and this institution.
Yes.
So how do you proceed?
That's an interesting point.
Do you think they were hired to destroy?
Well, I don't know, but I do know that one thing Luann told me when it came to stealing ideas, that usually the person whose ideas were stolen is looked on as the bad guy. Mm-hmm. As some kind of sour grapes person, somebody who pretends that it was his idea, things like that.
Too smart for their own good, as they say.
Yeah, so even you to articulate all of these,
mm-hmm.
I was sort of going, oh my God, maybe you shouldn't be saying this. But if people don't say it, that's how it keeps continuing. Because everybody looks the other way, and they don't say this stuff. I'm sure it isn't only MNN that this stuff goes on.
MNN is not going to implode by me telling them that they're corrupt. It's not going to implode. It's not going to. It's not even a drop in the bucket.
But what do you think, Josh? What's the best way to channel the power that we have? We don't want to turn people off. Like, I really admire that Dan Coughlin came on with Ugly George. I don't think any executive producer had gone on and done a show with Ugly George before.
No.
And for Ugly George to have somehow, by you seeing me with him, you realized he was more than just about sex and showing breasts. Because,
mm-hmm.
you know, at my age and what I'm doing, but he was making a relationship between information that somehow is liberating and threatening at the same time.
He called me yesterday.
Oh, anything
we're
that the
like
folks
this.
should have?
Yeah, me and Ugly are like this now.
Yeah?
We're best friends. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I'm glad too, because I wanted to. It's short notice, but I would have loved to have had him stay.
Yeah.
I know, but it would have been a process.
Oh, I see.
I would have to have written a letter, and it would have been approved and stuff. Well, maybe next time.
Anyway,
you
so
what you're doing with Marshall Rosenberg, you know, your mentor, bringing his concepts and ideas here and spreading his word is very helpful. And we need more nonviolent communication.
Yeah.
No doubt about that.
You were saying that we need, MNN is here, and it's here to stay. We should make it an environment that is here to stay, and we should be out there saying we're not going anywhere, and everybody's saying it's going to be gone tomorrow. We're going away. It's like they need to solidify themselves and get together and say, no, we want this to stay. We want MNN. We want public access. This is outrageous to say that they're going to take it down.
Right. Right, and I think that's a function of people working together, the producers, the viewers too. When viewers write me, the donations are incredibly important because it's an expression. We care about what you're doing. We want you to do it more. Then I think no matter what happens to MNN, not that I'm casting aspersions on it, I would seek you out. I would seek Josh out. I'd say, hey, here's some cameras, here's some equipment, here's the internet. Let's make it happen.
Well, Paula, before MNN, there was Manhattan Cable.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing happened. Oh, Manhattan Cable is disappearing. No, it just became Manhattan Neighborhood Network.
Yeah.
So the next company's just going to change the name, maybe. And it's just going to be, it's like a restaurant. The guy changes the theme.
I think at the hearing that they play a lot.
Yeah, they don't play it anymore.
Oh, they're not playing anymore.
I don't know why.
At that.
I was watching Paula every night, and she talks.
Well, I went up to one of
the.
I don't think he was a commissioner, but the guy that looked like he had the most, most on the ball, and I could see him react a little when I said that during 9/11 we did not see the correct images on television. I felt I got at least an eyebrow raise.
Well, they did edit everything. That was.
It was supposed to have been live. It was supposed to have been live.
It was not live.
Yeah, well, you have a little more insight into that because of your work.
TV fakery.
Yeah.
Well, the real TV fakery, the original, I suppose, TV fakery was pulling the channels on MNN was a form of fakery.
Because
was to not get the message out.
Because it's fake that there was a technical problem.
Right.
You could have
so
done
instead of getting people talking and to the camera, taking phone calls. I mean, you're talking about people whose parent, their loved ones were trapped in the towers.
Yeah.
We're talking distressed people here calling in.
You're talking about an urgent need for the channels to stay up.
So what did MNN do? They wanted to shut them off, cut the channels,
that's what you
hang
mean
up the phones, don't answer the phone, shut the place down. So it's like, that's what we don't want. We don't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
We don't want that to happen again. The next time 9/11 comes around, I mean, I'll break the doors down to this place if they shut it down again.
I just think, though, that it's going to require capital ownership. Binary economics is important. For example, Carl Pearson is suing Google. And the reason he can sue Google is because if Google's as big as it is, because it grew up by itself, it can do that. But it acquired 65 different companies, so that falls under monopoly. And I was wanting him to get interested in my suit against YouTube, which is taking original footage down, and they say, well, it's a private company. I said, yes, but what about trading with the enemy? What about taking down information selectively that then jeopardizes the national security? And he said, as one person, he can't handle all of that. But in a way, his lawsuit is a greater umbrella for the problem that I'm illustrating. Now, since he is antitrust and civil rights, he has been fighting on behalf of the artist who's had their work stolen. So he's pro-copyright. But the more I hear about it, the more I realize the artists have suffered under the copyright laws. They're not protecting the artists. So I think we should reconsider the whole thing. I don't have any easy answer, but I'm just saying there's a lot for a think tank to put on the table.
Well, maybe I can approach him about my my future lawsuit.
Well, she didn't. She thought it was too long. That's what she said. It's if the play already came out. But you're saying you had it registered before? Is that?
Yeah, it's sitting there protected in the Writers Guild of America. Actually, there's no statute of limitation on plagiarism.
Well, see, I would like to, in the spirit of my commitment to positivity and creativity, just walking around with you yesterday or the day before at the East Village was just so much fun, and there were so many different ideas that some of us are kind of like I don't know. We resonate with the environment. It inspires us. And there were so many ideas we had, each one of which could be another Gangs of New York. I would like to see you in concert with this lawsuit, if you do go that way. In concert, do it along with some very creative ideas that you're bringing more screenplays out, for example.
Yeah, well, unfortunately...
Like, let's do a screenplay on 9/11.
I would love to.
We've got the thumb on the pulse of all the groups. We Are Change, the No Planes. I'm beginning to believe No Planes is a psychological operation just as much as controlled demolition.
To finance a screenplay, if you want to do it like in a Hollywood setting, we would have to hire an agent who goes up to the producer and gives them about 4 or 5 pages. You don't give them the screenplay outright.
You've learned the hard way.
Yeah, and that's what I should have done.
Right.
I was also told, because I knew a cinematographer, actually the screenplay that I based it off, he's the director of film and cinematography. Well, I just like flubbed that whole line.
What?
Director of cinematography at the 20th Century Fox Films. And he's the kid I grew up with. And he told me, he says, you could be angry, he says, but you should be real flattered.
That's
true. At the same time, he says,
true.
yeah.
That's true.
Cool.
Yeah,
I just want to say lawsuits are very painful to me, because in the latest issue of Independent, they pointed out that WBAI's lawsuits are higher and more expensive than the entire component of free speech, television, and radio, which Amy Goodman was using for this entire week for the Democratic Convention.
Right.
They owe about $305,000, $100,000 in lawsuits. So it's very painful.
Is there that much corruption?
Well, I don't know.
Because of nonprofit?
There's that much agitation.
Well, what Carl told me is his lawsuit with Google means that although he has such a good case of monopoly because of the 65 companies that they acquired, by the time Discovery comes along, he's going to have trainloads full of papers that have to be gone through. So I think unless he can inspire, and I certainly think he has every reason to inspire many other people to jump on board, I'm just afraid that the new incarnation of Manhattan Neighborhood Network, if it is under these draconian laws of Google and YouTube, it's not going to be a bright picture for the common man and for protecting the public. But I think if we continue, the power of us working through differences like we did,
like a community,
is huge. It's just enormous. And because people have different cultural differences and different backgrounds, that's exactly why it's going to be more successful. The union will be more successful precisely because of the difference, because people have different good ideas. You know, that's my feeling.
Do you think that the human component will be taken out of the new MNN?
No more than the human component is taken out of YouTube already. We've developed a certain mastery, you or I. I mean, basically, I started all of this, Josh, about transparency. I find that the more transparent you are on the Internet, which is so easy to not be transparent, to make up a million accounts and different names and so on, the more powerful it is because it's connected to reality. And that's why I think walking around New York, like I'm really excited when you come back from Puerto Rico, that we do a walking tour of Manhattan. We'll go to different places.
Ellis Island, I was thinking.
Yeah. Oh, God, I cry every time I go to, I cry thinking about
and
that.
And
Ellis
the
Island.
Statue of Liberty is another great place.
Yeah. I
don't know if they let us in there, though.
Well, you know.
You can't climb the...
But if we do that, we can throw it open to have other people take the walking tour with us, and that would be a time that people could express
Are you welling
themselves.
up?
Huh? Yes, I am.
Isn't she sweet? Isn't this a sweet woman? She really is. She really is the best.
Oh, thank you.
Just mention Ellis Island.
Thank you.
Mention Ellis Island, 9/11.
Yeah. Well, I'm really wanting to
Wow,
work
you're really
with you.
touched by Ellis Island, huh?
Yeah. Well, they have big photographs there now.
Yeah, I went there when we were kids. You know, it was unrenovated, so it was left in a state when it was just a ruin.
No, I know.
And
My
it was
grandmother.
left over. Yeah.
My grandmother passed through Ellis Island. I mean, you can find that on the Internet. Again, that's how you could make the Internet more grounded.
Did she chisel and did she take care? Did she participate in the program where you paid $80 to have your name chiseled?
No, I don't think she did that.
They did that
but
in
they
when
found
was that, the 80s?
the boat that she left and who she left with.
I think
Some guy took her over expecting to marry her, and then she ditched him. But she pretended she was married to him. I told her in the rest home, she was 101 years old. I said,
wow,
you didn't really, you said you were married, and I know you weren't. and she goes, oh, I'm too old for that right now. But
yeah, 101.
Anyway.
She's still alive?
No, she died at 101.
Wow.
But anyway. So we're running to the end of the hour, and I want to thank both of you so much. Thank you for joining me, Josh.
Thank you, Paula.
And stay tuned for the Josh Volinski show, because as he said, it's going to get bigger and better, and we're going to work with each other's shows.
Josh does some of the best shows here on MNN.
Yeah.
And he gets all the community leaders. I mean,
I know.
What you did with Jeffries and all those guys, Professor Jeffries and Gilchrist was.
And I want you to put some specials on too.
Yeah, you were
you
talking
could just
about
hand them in just
how you
randomly.
got him out of it. You got him out of his dope. You got him a show. You know. And I feel like you're doing the same for me. It's like you're bringing that back out of me because I just was like mind control.
Mind control, self-mind controlled. That's. I think that's the point. We do it to ourselves. So hopefully we'll send some inspiration out and we'll get more producers, potential producers.